Hey Grace family, Kevin McKean here with Converge International Ministries. I'm one of your missionaries and I lead the U.S. engagement team with Converge, and I also lead our deaf ministry. And you've just heard from our good friends the Luskys over there in Japan, where they work with one of the least reached people groups in the world and one of the largest. But did you know that right there in Japan there's a least reached group in the middle of that least reached group? And that's the deaf of Japan. You see, deaf people in Japan, like deaf people in every place around the world, are the least reached of the least reached. So I want to share a couple of encouraging stories with you today. And the first place I'd like to take you is to West Africa, to the little nation of Togo. In a little village outside of Anaho, Togo, there was a little boy named Dose. And one of our young missionaries, Aslan McCarthy, met Dose and met his mom. And she quickly discovered a couple of really sad things. Dose had never been to school. No one in his family, no one in his village had ever learned to sign. In fact, Dose himself didn't even know his own name. But when the followers of Jesus show up, things change. And so I can tell you today that not only is Dose learning to sign and he's in school, but his school teacher, the guy who leads the deaf section of his school, has actually planted the first deaf church right there in that part of Togo. When the followers of Jesus show up, people's lives change and deaf people's lives change. Let me take you to another place, a place that maybe you couldn't even find on a map. I know most people can't. It's the island nation of Mauritius, which if you were to go to South Africa and then go to the east past Madagascar out into the middle of the Indian Ocean, you'd find yourself in the island nation of Mauritius. The deaf people on Mauritius had never once heard the name of Jesus. We call the deaf of Mauritius an unengaged, unreached people group. Well, at least they were unengaged until Converge Global Workers got there. And when our team first got there on the ground, having been invited by another ministry who had found some deaf people but couldn't reach them, well, within the very first day, a young deaf man named Christopher came to faith in Jesus and was baptized. And the next day, he led a friend of his to faith in Jesus, and he was also baptized. And now here we are, about 18 months later, and there's a deaf church birthing there with about 12 deaf believers, and they've even gone to another island not far from there, Reunion Island, and the first deaf person there has also come to faith. So I want you to know there's a movement of God towards the least reached of the least reached, the deaf peoples of the world, all over the world. And so as I wrap this up, I want to ask you to do two things. The first thing I'd like to ask you to do is to pray for deaf people, even right there in the greater Erie area where you live. You see, even in Erie, in that part of the world where you live, deaf people have very, very, very limited access to Jesus. So would you pray that a thriving deaf ministry is birthed right there in Erie, Pennsylvania, that can reach the people near you? And would you pray for deaf people all over the world? And one final thing, my friend Ivan, who leads our ministry, likes to say that in every church, between 1% and 4% of the people in that church have the spiritual giftedness and the cross-cultural aptitude to become global workers. You've sent out the Luskys, you're sending out others. Maybe God's calling you to be one of our global workers. So if you're interested in that, you can go to converge.org/missions, or you can talk to that wonderful global outreach team there at Grace. Talk to Brittany Wolf and her team, and they can help you take your next step toward the nations. So thanks for listening. We love you, and we hope to see you soon.